welcome to the Samson Strength Coach Collective podcast. We are joined today by Quan Thompkins, assistant football strength coach at UConn, as well as Chauncey Scissum, who is also serving in the same capacity as assistant strength coach for UConn football. I'm your host, Anthony Grasso. So what I'll do is I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background on our two interviewees here. Quan goes back to GA at Northwestern State University down in Louisiana. I'm not going to try and pronounce the town name. Do you want to try and pronounce what?
Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Okay, sounds made up to me, but we'll go with that. Interim director of strength and conditioning is ultimately what he worked his way up to for 14 sports there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, while serving as a teacher's aide. Prior to that, he was with the University of Georgia football program, NHC Healthcare in Greenwood, South Carolina. Shout out to the Wood, the High, specialize in physical therapy there, and at Wofford College. He got his bachelor's in exercise science from Landry University, which is also in South Carolina. Prior to that, spent some time at Coastal Carolina, and he's now pursuing his master's from Northwestern State University in health promotion. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA and is also a functional range conditioning mobility specialist. As for Chauncey, former college football player at Syracuse and UNLV. Prior to UConn, he spent some time at Memphis, was started off as a GA, worked his way up to an assistant, worked with football and men's tennis. Ultimately, prior to that was with Kentucky football and Pursuit Performance, which is in his hometown of Rochester, New York. He got his bachelor's from Syracuse in physical activity and a master's in sport and hospitality management and sport commerce from Memphis. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA and also holds certification through the USA Weightlifting Committee. So welcome, both of you guys. Appreciate you guys hopping on here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
No doubt. So what we kind of talked this through prior to hopping on here. We really wanted the bulk of this podcast to be around some specific instances, whether it be personal experiences and personal adversity that you faced in, throughout your career, or the strength and conditioning field in itself, providing some sort of resistance or some sort of adversity that you needed to overcome in order to get there. So typically what we do at the beginning of these podcasts, as everybody knows, and everybody who's listened, we typically give a little bit of a 3-minute background on the candidate prior to getting into some of the questions that I provide. In this instance, I thought it would be a disservice to these two guys because obviously they have their own individual stories, which are pretty lengthy and obviously deserve some time and attention and some dissection, as well as the people listening, because obviously these are two separate stories, and one revolves around some adversity specific to strength and conditioning, and one that revolves around a little bit of adversity in more of a personal setting. So what we can do is what I was thinking, we start with Quan, and we'll just kind of talk through that specific scenario that I outlined in your intro. Kind of take us through a little bit of that mindset you had as you worked your way through, University of Georgia and some of the other spots you've had. And then you get this GA spot at Northwestern State University. If you kind of want to walk us through that particular scenario from start to finish, obviously you started off as a GA, and then as you'll let us know here, he eventually became an interim director. But as we know, this came without some support, or I guess the necessary support that would probably be, pretty necessary in order to get things done. So yeah, Quan, if you want to just kind of talk us through some of the adversity that you faced there in that story as well.
Right. Okay. So I can actually start off with the conversation I pretty much had with the guys I was actually working with. So Jerry Myatt, he was the director of strength and conditioning at the time. And we actually worked with Chris Van Buren, right, at the time. So I remember we were just in the office one day, fall semester, after the season. I remember these guys telling me, I'm going, get a new gig, I think Maya went out to Texas Tech, and Christian Van Buren, he became the head strength and conditioning coach at D1. And they was I'm getting ready to leave, getting everything, situated. And I'm just okay. So they were like, Quan, so what's going on, man? You going anywhere? I'm just nah, I'm just here. So
chilling. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. So I remember then I'm just I remember those guys, just getting ready to leave. And I'm just thinking all right, so hopefully we get a new head guy here soon. Turns out we didn't for a few months. So I had to gradually, coming back in January, I pretty much got thrown in the fire. So I just had to figure out ways to make it work, man. I mean, one, being prepared. I feel like the number one thing I had to do was like being prepared. Like, and that's from like morning, because you gotta think, like I used to wake up legit like 5-ish in the morning, come in, this pretty small weight room, right? So come in. I used to train volleyball on one side while women's basketball was going on the other side, right? So it's like, I'm trying to figure out ways like, how do I make this happen? Like, how do I make this work? So I mean, like, I feel like the number one thing that led me to actually being successful in that role is just being prepared. I mean, it was hard, but like, it was worth it. I feel like I wouldn't have got thrown in that situation, you know, if I weren't like to some capacity ready for it. I mean, like, you wouldn't think you were ready for a situation like that until you actually get thrown into it. So I feel like just making it work. So I remember like actually waking up in the morning like around like 5-ish, you know, getting there. First group train, like I told you, training 2 teams at 6 o'clock. From there, like I used to have a football group, I want to say like around 7. So I mean like a minimum break like around 7. And then maybe I used to have like a football group like around 9. And then from there I used to go directly to my a weightlifting class, right? After teach weightlifting across campus. From there, I mean I used to grab a meal, come back, another football group. And would I go from there? And then it was just like a frenzy of people just rolling in. Cause I used to say like we had one weight room on campus, like super small. So I used to train like tennis. What was it? Track. Used to have prop guys, so guys who are not officially on the team, but who will be on the football team. What else? Track, and then I used to sometimes have baseball and volleyball as well. So it's just like
this is 14 teams, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So pretty much, yeah. So
14.
I feel like I told you, just going back to being prepared. I mean, like it was instances where like I just had to make things work. Like sometimes like on the fly, honestly. I mean, it's like because I was still going to school at this time as well. So it's just like making it work, just like figuring out ways how to make it work. I mean, and this is daily, like day by day. So
yeah, that's wild. So you essentially you assume this role, like you see everybody's leaving, you assume this role as an interim head guy. And in your mind, you're thinking, all right, this is probably going to be a temporary fix, maybe 2 to 3 weeks until they find the proper candidate. And then what's the word from the administration throughout this whole process while you're kind of working through this and you're trying, I mean, obviously it's not like every day you're super concerned with what's going on. In your mind, you're thinking, I need to figure out a way to make sure that every athlete that comes through that door today has some sort of support and some sort of training. Right. So how much, of the day to day is part of you thinking like, hey, I wonder if I'm going to hear from, the administration today on like, when are we getting new support? How is this going to end up working? Because this is not sustainable, right? Like this is not a long-term model here, me running 14 teams, 2 teams at once in a weight room or whatever. Like what were they kind of feeding you as far as information at that time?
So pretty much like not much. I knew we had like a couple candidates used to come roll in and out, but like these guys like didn't accept the job. So it's like, all right, if one person don't accept the job, we back to the drawing table. Sure. So from there, like in my mind, it's like it is in the back of my mind, but I know like that's the last thing I need to be worrying about right now. It's like I gotta train all these people today. I gotta figure out a way, to put these people in the right position for them to be successful. So I mean, like I pretty much put myself at the back burner of everything. Like I put athletes first and like kind of went from there.
It's interesting. And at this time, like obviously how long did this last for? You said it was a few months.
So this lasted for 3 months, like all the way up to COVID. Yep.
3 months.
So,
okay.
From January all the way to whenever COVID hit, I want to say like mid-March.
Okay. And then Northwestern State University, what's what D1, D2, D3, and what's their
FCS? Yep. So
FCS. Okay.
Yep,
and so okay. One question I'm thinking of is like, there had to be a point in time where like, and if you feel comfortable exposing this, let us know. There had to be a point in time where when you're training 14 teams and you're taking on such a like, it's not like you're just taking on a role where there's a lot of teams. Like you're assuming a role that is particularly and specifically a pretty daunting task, and one that, anytime a director is hired, there should be at least a full onslaught of vetting that goes down in order to make sure that somebody is good to go. Right. So typically it's a pretty lucrative position. I think we can all agree. Right. So during that time, what did you think were some of the like one of the major mistakes that you made in sort of like one of those like debacle style moments where you were like, oh, wow, this is nuts. Like what I'm doing here, I've got 14 teams to myself, 2 teams in a weight room at once. I'm doing this all day and night while trying to provide some sort of teaching. And it's not like I'm increasing my salary by any means. You're still a GA of sorts, right? You know what I mean? You just have a different title. Yeah, what were some of like the major like downfalls for, because let's be honest, like we're having this conversation here, but there's probably somebody else out there who's going through a similar situation, right? Like there's probably somebody out there who's dealing with a lack of support from an administrative standpoint in the world of strength and conditioning. So yeah, what were some of the major like shortcomings that you felt you found out pretty quickly and swiftly once you got into that role?
Well, first, I feel like one major shortcoming is actually dealing with administration, honestly. Like dealing with administration, just make sure like you're always talking with them. So if there is needs that you feel like you need to be successful, just talk with them, honestly. I feel like that's the number one thing. But number two thing, just like never like just getting that less go in that moment, because like no matter if you are by yourself, like it's people just like relying on you. So like they're looking for you. They looking for you to come through for them. Like so like just being selfless in that moment, just being selfless as possible, and just making sure like how can I best put this? You gotta love it. I'm not gonna lie, you gotta love it. To do that, like you gotta love it. So like making sure you actually love what you're doing first, and then just going from there. I thought if you love it, it actually make it a little bit easier, because it was times I was going through, and it was like super tough. Like I used to have to just go home and reset and think to myself like, why am I actually doing this? And like it always go back to one thing, like, I actually love doing it. So like
no doubt. Well, that did go. Yep. No, you go. You finish. I was just going to say, like, I basically am trying to think, like, there had to be at some point where you're thinking to yourself, like, I need to walk away from this.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, like, dude, despite how much you loved it, right? And like, obviously there's some sort of like incentive and there's some inner motivation that you have. Like there had to be at some point where you're like, how long am I going to allow the administration to put me in a situation? I mean, let's be honest, like, if the athletes and the student athletes are the investment that the university is making, like the people who are obviously providing some sort of attentive care for those athletes are also a major investment, that the administration and the support staff should be making. So, at some point you're probably thinking like, all right, where's the end goal here? Like, what is the end goal? Like, how long do we do this for? I need to probably get out of here. Like, what were your thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, so the entire time I was thinking like my end goal was actually, well, I wouldn't say my end goal, my goal at the time was to become an assistant strength coach anyways. So like while I'm dealing with this, like of course I was looking for like, like other opportunities, there's better opportunities that better fit me in the first place. So like as I'm going through, but like I told you, like I'm looking for things to know, but I know like once I leave, like I can like if I were to leave, I could just crash everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was my back of my mind. I mean, eventually I did get like an assistant spot like when COVID hit. So I do feel like, everything that kind of took place. I do feel like I was in that role for a reason. I feel like I didn't just get thrown in there. Like I learned like so much in that role. So it's like, it would have been one thing just to leave, but like I actually stuck it out, and like I actually appreciate myself, like looking back, knowing I actually stuck it out. Even though it was hard, even though like maybe I didn't want to do it, it was a reason why I had to do it. It was a reason why I had to go through things like that. Like I learned so much from being in that position. Yeah.
It's a good outlook. I guess like it's probably similar to anybody who's in any situation where they're experiencing adversity and part of them is thinking like, all right, I need to get out of here immediately, or I need to make a change, or whatever the case may be. Because like we're humans, like we think impulsively. We're always thinking about what our next step is, and we're always trying to figure out, how this plays into the bigger overall picture and make sense of everything and organize it and sync it up nicely. But obviously, we know that that's not how life typically works. So, was there a point where you were thinking, man, I could walk away from this, but at the same time, I'm probably right there, like really, really close to being able to actually achieve whatever that next step is. And I probably, I could probably rough this out for like a little bit longer, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, well, the only thing that was on my mind was actually seeing it through. Just like I know this thing can last forever, just seeing it through. I used to legit go home, right? I used to debrief with myself. So I used to go home, I used to debrief with myself. So I'm going home, like, I just made sure like I hit that reset button every night, because I know it used to be times I sit in my bed and I tell myself like I'm not having a bad day, but if I do have a bad day, it's only one day. You know what I mean? So I used to just go back to my room, make sure I hit that reset button every night, because I know coming through I got another obstacle to face tomorrow. But I always make sure I face the obstacle head on. So that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That positive Quan style outlook is always interesting. I don't know. At first when I met you, I thought it was like a South Carolina thing. I'm like, wow, he's just dude so positive all the time. I'm over here like, getting worked up about something. He's like, hey man, just go home, just be with it, and then show up tomorrow and it's just another day. And I'm like, what is this Gandhi stuff we talking here? Like, what is that? But no, I think, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this in this way, because I wanted to obviously give you a chance to put your personality and your characteristics in the way that you view, life on a daily basis, adversity in the world of strength and conditioning, or personally, through that lens, because obviously that's, has always helped me out. But I think it's more of a testament to your character, and anybody who's listening to this and is wondering, all right, who's Quan Thompkins and what does he provide and how can he provide value? Well, you're seeing it right here. Obviously, I would say like 9 out of 10 people would probably have quit that situation, right? You're talking like 14 teams, and it's not even just taking on, a massive, amount of teams. It's taking on a full department. You are the point person now, right? Like it's not like you have 14 teams and somebody else on the staff has like X amount of teams and you have a director that you report to. You're not only the point person, you're the director. You're also overseeing all these teams. On top of that, you're a teacher's aide. You're in Louisiana, which is, I don't know. I mean, I know it's not anywhere near Greenwood, South Carolina. So obviously you're thinking I'm far away from home. Obviously you got a girlfriend at the time. It's just like, so obviously most people would probably try to walk away from that situation, but I do think, and we'll come back to this in the end, but obviously like that speaks volumes to your resiliency, right? And what you have overcome. Like I said, there's I would say most people listening to this podcast probably have not maybe a similar story, but some story where they were like, yeah, man, the ground floor of this industry, not only do we all pretty much start there, it lasts a really long time. Like it lasts a lot longer than it does in most industries. The ground floor, sometimes you never leave the ground floor, but you are like almost brainwashed into thinking that you are leaving the ground floor. That's another little trick the administration's good at. So anyway, we won't go down that path. That's a separate conversation. But yeah, so, I appreciate that. And we'll come back to that because I want to get into Chauncey's story now. I kind of want to, switch gears a little bit. So obviously what we kind of outlined just now is specific instances in the world of strength and conditioning where maybe the lack of support staff, a lack of support from the, administration, whatever the case may be. Chauncey, you have a unique story, obviously, where you've taken a look at a different route. Obviously, you played college football and you had the experience of being a player. And I always felt like my time working with you allowed me to get better context to some of the concepts that I was trying to employ with the athletes, because you were able to provide information from the mind of somebody who has seen it firsthand, but not just someone who has seen it firsthand, but somebody who like understands and has a filter to what he saw. You're able to better explain some of the experiences that you've had on the field. So at Syracuse, at UNLV, right, and you're kind of making your way through this field. At Memphis and Kentucky, right, some of these larger name universities, and now you're obviously in a position at UConn to be able to handle this. But what you're about to tell us will outline. This did not come, in a smooth and easy path, right? And most of the time they don't, but yours particularly was a story that kind of took me back a little bit. So I'll let you tell it, if you want to kind of take us back to the adversity, this particular instance that provided that type of adversity to where, you kind of needed to, sit yourself down and be like, hey, I'm going to overcome this. And this is how I'm going to get to where I need to go. So I'll let you kind of walk us through that whole situation.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think the best situation or the best way to go about this is kind of starting with like what my mindset kind of was before this incident and kind of some of my thought processes, conversations with myself and some family, like how that kind of led up, kind of give you some context of like.
Sure.
So, obviously like played, like you said, played Division I football at Syracuse, fortunate enough to get that opportunity. Came in from a very good high school situation, pretty good. Honestly didn't have too much adversity through, high school sports. Only lost 4 games my entire high school football career. 3-sport athlete, second state runner up in the triple jump for track, like very dominant lacrosse player. So, sports are, pretty much any sport was kind of naturally came to me. So like it wasn't much, not much practice, but anything that I picked up or anything, it's just like I instantly got it, gravitated toward it. And, it wasn't not a high learning curve like some other people may have or may struggle with coming up. So on that, it was a little bit easier. Obviously still put in the work and, was hard working and trying to develop certain skills and stuff in order to get myself to come to the next level and end up playing college football. So on that aspect, did have the qualities for all that type of stuff. The portion, like I said, the adversity portion, that kind of struck and hit home as I made my way through college football and in college in general. I find myself like, starting to compete for positions, compete for playing time for starting positions and things like that with other people who are just as good, maybe even a little bit better than me, might have came from, other schools, Southern schools or schools with better foundation or, more support for football and, situations, more exposure, those type of things. So that adversity aspect was a little bit of a shock to me. Like I said, I was one of the best on my team. So it was kind of like I didn't have too many people who were like that much better to constantly push me throughout. I would say like my sophomore, or excuse me, not sophomore, like my junior, senior year, and kind of my transition into college. So college could be a little bit of a shock coming in a situation like that, right? Coming from the suburbs, that was another portion. Like not much adversity going on. 2-parent stable household, things didn't have a lot of issues coming home or deal with a lot of circumstances like some other, my counterparts had to deal with. And so I think that kind of formulated, my path a little bit, rightfully so. So, get to college, fighting for playing time. And then I believe it was my junior year, maybe end of junior year going into, redshirt junior year, redshirt senior year going in, just finished spring ball actually. And I remember like the beginning of spring ball having a conversation with my mom, like, yeah, like this is like, I'm playing with guys who need this. Like these dudes are like, they're sending money home to family. Like it's not just for the love. Like, they're getting their checks that I get to spend it on whatever I want or whatever. I got family support. They're sending their money home. They got little brothers, sisters. They got, money, they're sending home to, pay rent for, their moms and their dads and stuff like that. Like they're here working every day because they need this. This is not just for fun, for love type of thing. A lot of them really didn't even love football. They were just doing it because they understood or thought that was like their best chance to get out of their circumstances. So it's like, you bring it all around and it's like, a kid coming in my situation, 2-parent household, suburbs, didn't have to deal with like a whole lot on that journey to get into that level. It's like I'm trying to compete just off of the love for the game and fun while they're competing from an aspect of that they need this to survive.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of had to have a realization, a conversation with my mom, like, yeah, like I understand, like I haven't been through much adversity. It wasn't really like a scared conversation or like, what am I doing? It was more of like I got to lock in. I got to figure something out in order to get where I want to go. At that point, I was trying to, get my degree, but also NFL was very, a big priority also in my life. So I was trying to, put myself in the best situation or figure out how to alter my course in order to make sure that, my actions were still aligning with my vision and my goals. So it was kind of like that conversation. Like I remember having that, and then leads me into the situation that happened. So I ended up after spring ball having shoulder surgery, had a labrum tear. That was pretty bad, and probably should have happened sooner, the surgery. So ended up having the surgery about a week after spring ball. And then about another week after that, ended up going to one of my teammates, my roommates had a birthday party or whatever, had a gathering or whatever. Long story short, was the victim of a stabbing at that incident. Right. So, ended up having to pretty much run for my life, find my way to one of my teammates' cars. He ended up ultimately driving me to the hospital. So that first night was like, I don't even like, it's so like blotchy and blurry as far as what specifically was happening. I don't remember like how much sleep I got that first night. I just remember I had 2 surgeries in that first night. One was a surgery that I was awake for because my adrenaline was going too high, so they couldn't give me anything to calm me down. And then the second one, once I was able to stabilize, they were able to put me under and start the surgery. But I know I had I had blood on my lungs, I had internal bleeding, had about 4 stab wounds. I had one that split like right down the middle of my lip, one right down the middle of my chest as well, one underneath my left armpit, which ended up getting about, I think it was like either 4 inches or 4 centimeters from my heart sac. So that was the big one that caused the internal bleeding. So Yeah, it was a rough night. Like I said, can't really put it all together because it was just so much happening. So I just remember teammates coming in, all that type of stuff to the hospital and whatnot. But, like I said in the beginning, so during all of that, I also had a shoulder surgery that I was also rehabbing. So, I'll get to the recovery process. So,
yeah. Hey, Charles, before you go, what year was this in your college career?
This occurred this was 2016.
2016. So you're what at this point? You're a sophomore, junior?
This is redshirt junior.
Redshirt junior year. And you said, you had to run for your life after the initial stabbing, right? Like you did there, altercation breaks out, right? Like you're obviously injured at this point, and you had to then run and then try to find some sort of security. And that was when your friend took you in his car to the hospital.
Yeah. Yep.
And okay, so yeah, and just take us through like the thought process at that particular point. I know you said it was a little blurry, a little blotchy, but the idea that in your mind you're probably thinking like, I could potentially die tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So like once I actually realized that, because at first I didn't even realize I was getting stabbed. Like it had happened so fast, and then like once I was able to realize, I actually had the only reason why I'm still here, I had another teammate, one of my other roommates actually punched the dude in the face, distracted him, which freed me up to actually run after I realized that I was actually being stabbed. So once I was able to do that, I was able to get up and run. And then, he brought his attention back to me. That's when he led to start chasing me. And then at that point, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm not getting caught. Like this is not the end for me. So I'm running. It's fight or flight. I have a shoulder surgery. I could barely defend myself. One arm is in the sling. I'm like, I got to get up out of here. So we were in like some off campus like apartment, but like student only living like area. So like I'm trying to just run around the apartment buildings and lose him. And then, like, I guess he just stopped running, ended up going into his apartment that was close by. And at that point, like, I had a teammate had got his car pretty much pulled up, and that's when I hopped in, and he just drove me to the hospital. So,
wow. Yeah. So, so then next steps, right? Like you're thinking the recovery process to the shoulder, recovery process from this particular situation. Obviously your parents are probably in a frenzy trying to figure out like what's happening and what's going to happen next. Take us through kind of what you were going to initially lead into after the, surgeries that took place and everything kind of like came to you, realize like what had just happened.
Yeah. So honestly, so I woke up the next morning, and honestly, my first thoughts was like, I'm going to do this. Like I woke up and like, for whatever reason, it was just like, yeah, like I'm going to do this. Like I'm getting through this. Like, I don't know like what came over me, but it feels like that's why I brought in that conversation with my mom into it, and, talking about adversity and stuff. And like, for whatever reason, it felt like God touched me and was like, and like, I don't know if he felt the need to put me through a situation that I would have to pretty much dig my way out of, and like, for lack of better terms, like bring myself back from the dead, and like in order to develop or like, create some of those qualities that I think are, vital for certain situations in life. But like when I woke up the next day, like I had family, there was friends and, teammates and coaches in my room and stuff. And like, I was just like, I was in a pretty good mood, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Like,
no doubt.
I'm going to figure this out. Like, I got no other choice. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm meant for this. Like, this is tough. This is going to be hard, but I'm down for whatever it takes type of situation. So that was pretty much my first thought going into it. The recovery process was much different than that a little. I can say like it was much more detailed. It was tough. There were, days in the hospital. There were some nights in the hospital where like, it was literally just me. I'm up thinking like, it's only me. I'm talking to me. Nobody else is there. I got to have a conversation with myself about, the best way to go about this. how am I going to go about this? The mindset that's needed in order to get through this type of situation. So it was a lot of self-reflection, just a lot of self-talks, a lot of positivity talks, but real at the same time, to figure out and make sure that, this is something that I actually wanted to do and that I needed to do, because my mindset was like, I'm not just preparing to get back to regular life. I'm preparing to get back on the football field. Like, I was not, that's the type of mindset that, a lot of athletes have. We're not worried about, just getting up and walking, because a lot of times that doesn't satisfy us. You're like, okay, when can I play? When can I, put the pads back on again, whatever. So that was really, really my only thought, and the recovery process was in depth, but, we had put together, a great plan, I think, with the athletic trainers at Syracuse, fortunately, and they were all on board with, everything and my goals and everything aligned, and thankfully so. That occurred in, I believe, April. End of April. And fortunately, like, by the grace of God and the hard work, I was ready to go by August 1 for camp. So
what?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so wow. Yeah, that's wild. So we'll do here, and what I want to do is I want to pause there and just kind of go through. You talk about those moments you're in the hospital by yourself, the self-talk, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of transition us back to Quan now, and then we'll kind of bounce back and forth. So, like, obviously, specifically talking about these moments where we're facing this adversity, you're coming across some sort of challenge in your life. And then obviously you have these career goals in mind. We all have the projection sheet that we've put together, your 5 to 10 year plan as to like what you are going to do and how you're going to achieve it. Right. And then obviously in both of these instances, in yours, Quan, where obviously you're taking on the role of something that's almost, impossible to achieve. And Chauncey, obviously, overcoming some physical harm that's been caused to you. Right. There's going to be those moments where you're in a dark place where you're really thinking in your mind, like, hey, like, well, what's happening here? How is this going to lead into the next? Like, is this it? Like, is this kind of all that I'm going to be? Right. Like, is this kind of the end of it all for me as far as like what I'm capable of doing and my trajectory kind of going in different paths? So, I want to kind of stick with that, like those moments where you have extreme self-doubt, I guess is the way we could put it, where it's almost like overwhelming self-doubt. And Quan, I mean, let's be honest, like you I don't really know of anybody who has like as little self-doubt as you always seem to be pretty confident and calm and cool and collected, like I mentioned before. But if you kind of want to just take us through those moments where you have had some like overwhelming self-doubt as to like what you were going to be able to do. Because obviously right now, like we're doing this podcast, both of you have become assistant football strength coaches at a Division I FBS university. So, or a Division I university and FBS program. So obviously you've achieved something, right? You've responded from the adversity and you've gotten yourself to it. And obviously this isn't the end. The trajectory is only up from here. But those moments where you really were unsure of like what was going to happen, like what could potentially happen moving forward. Quan, if you kind of just want to talk a little bit about that, those moments where you had that extreme self-doubt.
So I guess like starting on what you just said, like I may look calm, cool, and collected, but it doesn't mean I am on the inside. That's how I look, Because the reason why I look like that, because I know like you got one or two choices, right? So it's like either you quit and you stop now, or like you just continue to keep going. Like I feel like I live off that same quote for like years, like just keep going, like keep working. And like when you keep working, like things like tend to find themselves like towards, but things, good things tend to, come towards you once you keep going. So it's just like the ability just like to continue to keep going, to continue to go, like keep pushing through, man. Like I feel like that's the number one thing. So it's like, and you say when I'm in these deep, dark moments, right? So it's like we talk about this all the time, like how do I get through these moments, right? Like whether it being like jotting them on a piece of paper and like trying to think through that, or like maybe like self-reflecting, like maybe like talking to like guys, like we used to have conversations all the time, like we going through like different things, like how do we get through these things, right? I feel like having great people around you is one thing, but actually it's just like knowing when you about to get to that edge, right? So like you on a cliff, right? You hanging towards that cliff, like what can you do to like pull yourself back from that cliff, right? And I feel like it all starts here. So everything is mental. So and like I told you, like how do you decide to maneuver through that situation? There's so many ways to maneuver through that situation. So I think like just figuring out ways and like just like actually knowing yourself a little deeper and pretty much just figuring out ways, knowing yourself a little deeper, and just like having good people around you. Honestly, I mean, like I feel like things will come, but I feel like bad things come. Like it's life. Like it happens to everybody. Like you gotta figure out a way to get through the storm. So like just get through it, man. Like it'll be hard, but you gotta continue pushing. So.
No doubt. And I think I'll have Chauncey talk about this as well, but I think there's something to be said about now, at that particular point in time, right? Like you, and I thought you were about to say this, and you kind of want to do a little bit, but like you have some self-doubt, maybe once or twice, whatever the situation is, but you now have something on the exterior, someone watching you. Obviously you have a son, you have, a wife, whatever the case is, right? Like in everyone's circumstance, you got a girlfriend, you got your family member, right? Like there is something to be said about coming across as this formidable aspect in somebody's life, despite the fact that you may have some serious self-doubt as to what is going on in your career, where it could potentially be going, and this is while you're in the midst of, a really challenging time. But you now have somebody that you need to kind of show, and, I don't want to say never show weakness. You want to show vulnerability, but at the same time, like they want to look to you as somebody who's obviously going to be a beacon of fortitude, and an example of fortitude in your life.
I feel like, bro, like I had so many plans that failed, and like come in all, like I always end up on my feet. So it's like, if it failed, like maybe it wasn't for me. Honestly, like maybe that wasn't my position to be in, but like I will always be where I need to be. So I can come down to that, like that's all.
Yeah. No, that's good. And so Chauncey, going back to you now. So obviously sticking with that similar theme, you have these moments, right? You're in the hospital by yourself. You're trying to figure out, like, and then you're with the Syracuse athletic trainers. They do put together a pretty good plan. You're feeling pretty confident in the plan, and eventually you're back on the football field, right? But those moments where you were kind of like, hey, I'm by myself here. All I really have is myself. What am I going to be able to do to try to, get myself in a mindset that will allow me to push forward and allow me to actually pursue this path? Because it's one thing to outline the path, but then it's another to actually prepare yourself to take on that path. So you kind of want to just take us through what it was like and provide any insight in those deep, dark moments where you had this, this self-doubt and this overwhelming kind of concern as to what was going to happen. And then how you guys obviously sort of formulated a plan to make it happen and to sort of put that situation in the past, if you can put a situation like that in the past at all. Right.
Right. For sure. So, yeah. I think first of all, like, I know we talked about, like, how from my situation or whatever, which is, I'm sure, very similar to a lot of other people's, the situation, I don't think the situation wasn't in line with the values that I was raised with. My family, like, raised on great values. You know what I'm saying? Once adversity comes, like, you have to figure out a way to overcome it, those type of things. Just because I hadn't been through a certain situation didn't mean that I wasn't able to. It's just they hadn't occurred yet, or to the level or, consistency of some other people have. But yeah, I think first and foremost, like, the values that my parents had raised me on, and then, like, just not quitting, not being a quitter, protecting my name, like having some pride about who we were. I think those things were very important to me. And then also, like, you touched on it a little bit, but like when we were sitting in the hospital bed, like late night, like midnight, 1 a.m, like I can't sleep. Who was there with me? Literally nobody. Like, I'm the only one in the room. Like, I got all these tubes in me, like, had internally, like, just sitting there with tubes in me, got this breathing thing next to me. Like, you got to be real with yourself, right? Like, there's no fake positivity. There has to be some sort of real positivity with, like, real action and a plan behind it. So literally just sitting there figuring out, like, how am I going to do it? To what intensity am I going to do it at? And I think the biggest things were, like, telling myself, understanding, like really understanding that it was not going to be easy. It was not going to feel good. And that it wasn't going to be quick. It was going to be a process, right? That's anything that we go through now. Like, those are, like, the main three things that, especially, like, anything that's worth it isn't easy, right? Like, it wasn't going to be quick, right? especially in my situation, I was in, it was physical. It was going to hurt, like, you know what I'm saying? And then it was going to be a long process. Like I said, I wasn't fully recovered or to the recovery that allowed me to play until August 1st, pretty much. But so I think like the most physical example I had of that was probably, it was like two things. So in the hospital, like once that happened, like you have internal bleeding or like, so pretty much what happens, like you're breathing or like your cardio like resets, like I don't know, not VO2 max, but like your conditioning resets. So like I walk up a flight of stairs, I was winded. Like one flight of stairs, I got to sit down, like I'm breathing hard, like that type of situation. So they give you this little breathing machine. And like, once you can like, I think like when you get to like the meter all the way up, like your breathing has recovered or whatever. Like when I was in the hospital I could barely get it halfway, maybe like a quarter of the way up or whatever. But it's like, all right, just keep working on this. This is the goal right now. A little bit more every day, a little bit more every couple of days, right? Just working on that. So that was one thing. And then the other example I already gave with the steps, right? Shoot, I would get upstairs, I got to sit down. All right, boom. The next day, all right, let's see if I can hit 2 flights in a row, right? Let's see if I can do that again. Let's see if I can hit 3 flights in a row without having to stop. Like just little daily progress. Nobody's there clapping for me, right? Nobody's there. Come on, you can there's no external motivation or stimulus. It's just me, right? It's literally me versus me, just trying to take another step each day. That's really what that whole process and like experience showed me like firsthand. And like, those are like the qualities that will forever be with me now, like through all of this, like anything that I go through, strength conditioning or just life in general. You know what I'm saying? So I think those are the biggest things, right? That, nothing's going to be easy, right? Nothing's, it's going to be a long process, right? And sometimes it's not going to feel good. But if you set a plan and just daily progression, like slow progression is better than no progression, right? As long as you're going in the right direction. So like, I'm a firm believer in that. Just keep your head down, keep moving. And like if you have a vision and you understand that the things that you have to do to get there aren't always going to be like, the thing that you want to do, like feel like you could do, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great answer. One thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just feel like Chauncey made a great point. So pretty much he just told you, like, you got to be a different type dude to like withstand a storm and understand like, yo, this may be terrible. Like this may last 5 years. This may last 2 years. Like you never know. Like, but like whatever happened, I'm gonna continue to walk. Like, so however long it lasts, like how hard it is, I'm gonna still make it through. Like you said, like you got to be a different type dude to actually, know that and actually still go through it and actually still be willing to go through it with a positive mindset as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, what I was going to say is like, we talked about like potentially moving on from these situations, but you probably don't want to have, in this instance, right, for both of you guys, you had adversity that you faced, and it's probably always going to be in the back of your mind. You probably don't want to remove it too far from that, right? Because it is serving as a motivational factor, and it's serving as a reminder that regardless of whatever your current circumstances are, you both overcame a situation that seemingly felt like it would never end, right? Like it just seemed like to every day in and day out, was constant, same situation. And obviously both of yours are different circumstances, but at the end of the day, we can both agree that both of your circumstances involved long drawn out processes that each day was just, a drag, and each day kind of had its own little challenge to itself. Right. So, I think it's interesting that you've both been able to take these instances and not remove them too far from your memory and not try to completely, move on from them and get rid of them, but more so understand them, absorb them, and make them part of who you are so that you can then move forward and apply that sort of outlook you had for both of those situations to everything that you encounter in your daily life. That kind of leads me to my next point, and my next question for both of you guys is, where do we stand on, Chauncey just finished off talking about like what he needed to do to get his mindset to be prepared. And there was no external stimulus in those days where he was in the hospital by himself and he's trying to figure out a way to walk up the stairs by himself, whatever the case is. Where do we stand on the current state of motivation in our strength and conditioning industry, right? Like I think motivation has so many different there's so many different terms and phrases now and hype videos and all of these things, right? And I think it's really interesting because both of the situations that you guys outlined, there was no cheerleader there, you know, with some music playing to get you going, regardless of, like you said, there's no external stimulus to try to, you know, fire you up to get you going, to do what you need to do to overcome what it was you were trying to overcome. So, you know, I want you guys to be able to kind of give your take on it. But I personally think that obviously there's a lot less of that discipline, right, that is taking place in the field now. And it's a lot more of, hey, we need to have constant external stimulus, constant some sort of stimuli to provide to these guys to get them going, right? It's always like, hey, how can we get more, do more, juice, energy, whatever the words are, right? But what are your thoughts on the way motivation is being approached now from a psychological perspective and as a coach, right? And kind of your thoughts on ways that we can potentially do it better. And Quan, we could start with you.
So first, I feel like it got to be real. Like, it got to be true. Like, if it's not, you're going to easily get exposed. Like, I'm not going to go on something like I don't want, that I kind of want to do, I kind of don't. Like, nah, you either all in or you all out. Like, let's make it simple as possible. So, like, have these external motivations, like, it's no external motivations. Like, because at the end of the day, it's going to show. It is in you or it's not. It's like, no faking
right.
it. It's like, you all in or you're not.
Right, yeah. And do you feel like your particular situation has kind of forced you into a position, like that kind of outlook where you don't see, you know, each day as this like grand adventure, right? It's like, hey, it's another day. I have to do what I need to do in order to make sure that I provide the best version of myself for my athletes, that kind of deal.
Well, yeah, I know I wake up in the morning, I know I got a job to do. So it's like nobody else can get a job done but me. So it's like either I don't show up to work or I show up to work. Like, if I show up to work, I'm going to go 100% while I'm there. Like,
yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I think that's also interesting too, because like, you know, and that outlook may have changed over the years, right? I don't know if that's any different now than it was prior to, but I think you get to a point where you realize, like you said, you wake up in the morning, you have a job to do. And, you know, I think it was Rajesh, my intern coordinator when I interned at Quinnipiac, but he was like, some point, and he's like, you know, motivation and, you know, being mentally tough and all this stuff is built around just doing what you need to do in times where you don't really feel like doing it or you don't really want to do it. Right. It's like, you know, one day you're going to wake up in the morning and you're not going to feel well, and your wife may not feel well and your son or daughter may not feel well, but you're going to figure out a way to get up and do what you need to do because you have to go to work and you got to make stuff happen because you got athletes who are relying on you, whatever the case may be. So at that point in time, it's like, there's no music playing. There's nobody yelling in your ear. It's just literally you. And you just have to decide, okay, I need to go do what I need to do. And there's no, you know, there's no smoke machines and lights and, you know, cameras, you know what I mean? It's a different ballgame. So Chauncey, if you kind of want to, and I know you've got some good thoughts on this, obviously somebody who's obviously, you know, played college football as well. So coming from being a player to obviously working as a coach now, it's like, where do you stand on, you know, how you view motivation, your current motivation, and then obviously how you think we kind of approach it in the field and ways we can do it better?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So I would say, like, as I've gotten more into the field and like, you know, develop more as like, you know, as you get into the field, you learn more about strength training and training in general and stuff like that. So like just on my own journey and, you know, more specifically with the players, like just the power of consistency is like just being consistent, like stacking great days in a row, like regardless of the intensity, whether it be high or low intensity, like just having great intent, like consistently, like days in a row, like, and you look back on those days and like, you know, the learning and adaptation you get from those, like that right there is like motivation enough. Like just being able to lock in, focus, get better at specific tasks, and then understanding that, you know, I've gotten better at whatever I was trying to do. Like that right there is like, that's the most meaningful motivation that you're gonna, you know, ever produce. Like, firm believer, and like we always have conversations. It got to be in you. It can't be on you. Like, y'all know I'm the playlist dude. When we going, y'all already know we're gonna turn up. Like, we already got music, but you know, at the end of the day, if the music's off, the work's gonna be the same. Like, the quality of the rep is still gonna be the same. Like, you already know, like, push ice is not gonna affect my squat technique. You know what I'm saying? Like,
just a little bit though, maybe like 10%.
Yeah, big 30 get on there is definitely gonna, you know.
Okay, all right, now we're talking.
You feel me? Got to put big 30 in there.
Yeah, no doubt.
For sure. But yeah, that's always like, you can have music and things like that, but you can't lose focus of what the real job is and what's the real preparation, what's the actual thing you're preparing for, and making sure all your visions and your training modalities and stimuli align with those type of things. So at the end of the day, you can have the music as loud as you want. You can't play football, you're still gonna get blowed by 30. And it really don't matter what y'all listening to. Like, you already know. Like, none of us are anti-music, you know what I'm saying? But consistency is the real builder. Like, that's how I feel.
Yeah, no doubt. Quan, what were you saying?
I'll say, the work's still gonna be the work, man. So I feel like that's why I like, we say not getting too high, not getting too low, staying nice and medium, because like you gotta think like some of these days we got like mat side days and dudes going crazy, injuries can occur, right? Because the first thing they go out of mind is your mental. You're not locked in as much, right? So that's how injuries do occur, So just making sure, like Chauncey said, you stay consistent with every rep. My warm-up set should look like my final set. So.
No doubt. That's a great point, because I think that's something that we overlook as well. Like, I think we all assume, especially just playing any sort of competitive sport, that we're supposed to bring emotion to it, bring some sort of adrenaline. Everything needs to be. Whereas, obviously, as we know, with almost every other circumstance in life, whenever we're highly emotional or overly emotional about something, it leads us to make some sort of misstep or some sort of mistake in our decision making abilities. Right? Emotion is quite literally the antithesis of rationale and reason. Right? And so, I always firmly believe that in order to execute some sort of task, in order to be skilled at that task, right, I think you just need to understand the technical ability that's required to complete that task, and whether or not you're super amped up to do it or not. I mean, of course, like, it's fun, it's cool, and everything. We all kind of want to go that route. It'll come naturally. We don't need to produce it, right? Like, you don't need to try to manufacture energy or manufacture adrenaline. That'll be there naturally. But I do think at the end of the day, it's really coming down to you're either prepared or you're not. You get the job done or you don't. Like, there really is no other way around it. You can be as hyped up as you want. It's like, are you prepared to do the task at hand and execute the task at hand, or are you not? So good. So what I want to do is I'll just wrap up with one more question each. Obviously, I want to end this on a positive note, and to show obviously that despite adversity that anyone listening to this may be facing, that there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, right? So if both of you, and Quan, you can go first. We'll just kind of let us know a little bit about, what you find interesting in your current role at UConn, or just, it doesn't even have to be at UConn, but just in general, like you've gotten yourself up to, you're an assistant strength coach now, you're working with football. What are some of the things that you really enjoy about working with the athletes, the things that you enjoy about the coaching, some of the things you're interested in, whatever concepts or systems you like to use, just a little bit about, what you like, what you're interested in, and kind of what continues to push you forward in this field to continue to pursue opportunities and obtain qualities that you need to obviously possess to continue to move forward.
Right. So I say pretty much here at UConn, like we actually have the autonomy, actually program for our own groups, and actually, do the program at hand. So like whenever I learn information, I'm always in Chauncey office, and I was always in your office, just learning as much as I can, because like the only way I can be the best for my players, right, is just to grow. So like whenever I stop growing, like I know like they're done. So if I can only teach them an A skill and I can't progress from an A skill, guess what they know? An A skill, right? Right. So it's like I feel like as long as I'm able to grow and like I can put it on a piece of paper and I can actually, do it to a certain standard where it needs to be done and allow these guys to grow too. I mean, like it's unstoppable. I mean, I feel like the work is like it's so much work to be done, when I continue to grow. So I feel like lately, like I said, you say something that interests me lately is functionally, like, perception action drills. I mean, like me, you, and Chauncey, like we was always talking about like figuring out better ways, to put these guys in open field situations compared to like closed drills. In the past, like I was used to doing like these closed type of rudiment drills, but now I'm learning how to progress and actually open them up to more like a technical tactical thing that I know that actually, relays over closely to the football field. So it's like, that's one thing that I'm very interested in right now. And like, so I feel like just attaining some type of knowledge each and every day. I mean, like whether they're being like spiritually, mentally or physically, just like continue to learn. Like I'm huge on learning. Like I'm huge on like continue to build myself all around, just so I can like help these players out. Like I feel like that's my number one goal is to help these dudes and like not only help them as like an athlete, but help them as a human. So like we talk about things like going through adversity, like guess what they're going through right now, adversity. So
right.
Just having those like common talks and like making sure like I can help develop them like all the way around and like just not in one realm, just not in that physical realm. So like that's one thing that like motivates me and it will continue to motivate me as long as I do this. So
no doubt. That's an awesome answer. I appreciate that, Quan. Chauncey?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, along the same lines, pretty much like being here, like I feel it's very rare that, assistants actually get to like program like all of their stuff and like essentially be a head strength conditioning coach. Like that's essentially like what we've all been able to do. And it's like right now, like where we've all had the experience in some capacity to be a head strength coach before we are going to be a head strength coach or, go on to whatever our next, venture is. So like that right there is like, let alone like the biggest point just based on like we can, we're implementing things. We see what works, what doesn't work, what things we want to tweak. Like that thinking process and that learning process is like something you really only get once you're in it because you get to see things actually in play and how they work versus on paper versus in reality. And also like just like the conversations and like brainstorming that it also creates, like how Quan said, like we were always in each other's offices, like just talking about literally anything that we thought was, of use for or could help, help our guys and, put them in best situations. So like, I would say alone that right there has been like, the number one thing is that autonomy and getting that experience, pretty much really before we need it. So I think that is very huge. And then, along the same lines, like you guys already know, like I'm huge and like I got a big focus on, speed development and, developing those qualities and, really taking the interest in that based on like my background and experience at University of Kentucky, which was like my first real glance of not only a college football, setting outside of my experience, but also like a true like speed development program. So like that was like a big influence on like, my focus area and, things that I like to, dive into. And then also what, the other part about, what we always met about, the process, the game changer, Fergus Conley, Cam Joss, like all those type of things because of like how forward thinking it is, but yet how simple and like just applicable it is to the game of football or like whatever sport that, you're preparing your athletes for. So, those are the biggest things. It's like, the conversations that we were having and, the ideas that we were coming up with that were like, I guess you could say we're like forward thinking, but like so simple and like just so necessary for the, the setting that we're working in, for the athletes and the populations that we're working in. Everything has been like, especially, with you two, has exploded like my growth. I feel like has like propelled me, to the next level. And like also just like the gateways that were opened up from like the conversations we had, not just like the literal information that was given, but like, the gateways and like the avenues that were opened up for us to find it on our own too, I think has been like another huge proponent of everything. So it's been dope, man.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. I love both those answers, and I obviously appreciate both of you guys hopping on here to do this. This is exactly what I wanted to be able to do, is obviously give you guys a chance to showcase, your thoughts on things, because obviously I hold you both in high regard when it comes to how you guys view things, the lens you look through, and the reasons that you have to be able to look through those lenses. So I'm glad you're able to share your stories today. We're going to wrap up with that. If you guys, we're right about an hour or so. If you guys have anything else that you want to say, speak now or forever hold your peace. And if not, we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, I got some. Yeah, but shout out to them. I got to throw it in there. I'm probably the only Bengals fan that anybody who will listen to this podcast know. Been with the Bengals since Ocho Cinco. Y'all can blame him. Since middle school, you can ask Ant and Quan. I showed them a video in my room. All right, it's Bengals everywhere. So this is not.
Hey, since we shout out places, y'all already know I got to shout out, man. Shout out to Greenwood, South Carolina, baby. Shout out to the Wood.
Yeah, dude. Well, yes, we are amongst greatness. Quan Thompkins did carry the Greenwood High School football team on his back. He has built the facility that is in Greenwood with his bare hands. That's why his back bothers him to this day. How is your back? Is it better now? You feeling good?
No, we in and out. We in and out.
Process. So one day at a time.
No, it's not better. This man almost left me yesterday while I was filling the fridges because his back was hurt.
Oh God! All right.
I got the work done, baby. I got the work done.
All right. Well, yeah. As long as the work gets done. Yeah, and I can confirm we did get the video from Chauncey's mom. He is a true Bengal fan. He's got a fat head on his wall. He's got the merchandise. He's got, I believe, a license plate in his room. There's a Bengal logo above his bed. So yeah, dude is he's all in on the Bengals. Hopefully they win, because I think by the time this podcast gets put out there, the Super Bowl will have come and gone. So hopefully they win, and you bringing that jersey to work will actually come to fruition. So all right, well, hey, appreciate this, both of you guys. We'll talk soon in a little bit, but that's going to wrap up our episode for today. Appreciate everybody listening, and we will catch you next time.